Good evening, Peter Goertz. I'm a psychiatrist. Is hearing voices psychotic? Not necessarily. Am I psychotic if I hear voices? Not necessarily. We want to keep an open mind. And what brought this to my mind is I saw a young girl, in an emergency room, and she heard a voice, and the voice said something that made the child do something potentially dangerous. The child seemed happy, playful, well-related, had friends, was doing well in school. So I did not see any psychiatric illness. And do I want to send a child like that to a psychiatric hospital, a locked ward? I just didn't feel it was the right thing to do. And I think that's where the DSM is good. Pretty much for every diagnosis to be made, you need some impairment of functioning. And this girl did not seem to have that. So in order, based on the DSM in general, to make a diagnosis of a mental illness, you need to show some impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. So someone can be depressed. We can all have emotions. Someone can be anxious. Someone can have features of post-traumatic stress. Someone can hallucinate, have delusions, So overall, we can have emotional and sensory experiences without necessarily being diagnosed with a mental illness. So we don't want to necessarily label emotional and sensory experiences as mental illness. And in this case, with this child, I did not feel that was warranted. Now, on the other hand, like I alluded to, the voice was telling the child something that led to the child doing something that could have been potentially dangerous. So even if someone does not have a mental illness diagnosis, they can do things that can be potentially dangerous. Let's say a child is in a store with the mother and the little girl hears a voice saying, "Walk away." And the child just walks out of the store into the street, a little girl. So that potentially is dangerous, but the child may or may not be psychotic. So psychiatry, that's one thing I really like about psychiatry, is it's not all cut and dried. It's a big gray area, just like life in general tends to be a gray area. So someone can hear voices and, in my opinion, potentially have no psychiatric problem. It's just an experience of hearing voices. Now, if it bothers the person, if it creates consequences that are difficult for the person, that may be a different story. And voices can be related to or caused by various things, including dissociative experiences in an extreme, like in dissociative identity disorder. Drugs like methamphetamine can cause auditory hallucinations. Auditory hallucinations, or what we call auditory hallucinations, hearing voices, may be based on spiritual experiences. A delirium, so let's say an older person with a urinary tract infection might become confused from the infection and start hearing voices. So delirium based on medical issues could cause auditory hallucinations. And there can be sleep-related hallucinations. So either as we're falling asleep or as we're waking up. So in the transitions between wakefulness and sleep, or the other way around, sleep and wakefulness, you can have hallucinations. So one could maybe see these as intrusions of dreams or features of dreams into wakefulness. So someone, while they're falling asleep, might hear voices, or while they're waking up. And that's not necessarily something, or in general, we do not treat those experiences with an antipsychotic medication. If someone doesn't sleep for long enough, they may start hallucinating. If someone's depressed, that can be associated with hallucinations. If someone has bipolar disorder, they may hallucinate. And of course, in schizophrenia, people often have auditory hallucinations. And if someone is hearing voices that do not seem to be based on what we would call a mental illness, they still might benefit from psychotherapy in order to help them cope with the voices, because in our society, if someone says they're hearing voices, then people tend to get shocked. So psychotherapy may help the person themselves to cope with voices they're hearing, but also psychotherapy may also help the person to cope with other people's reactions to the person hearing voices. Thank you.